The cafeteria waitress had no business in that room. But the little girl was dying, and she knew something the surgeons didn't. What she didn't realize, saving the Mafia boss's daughter would cost her everything she knew. Until he decided to save her back. The fluorescent lights in St. Augustine's hospital hummed like dying bees at 11:47 p.m. when Lucia Ricci's heart monitor flatlined for the third time. Clara Martinez was supposed to be scrubbing coffee stains off cafeteria tables. Instead, she stood frozen outside the staff elevator, watching two nurses sprint past her like the building was on fire. Anaphylaxis, severe, one gasped into her radio. Patient's airway is closing. We've tried epinephrine twice. Nothing's working. Clara's blood turned to ice. That word. Anaphylaxis. The elevator doors were closing, but Clara's hand shot out, stopping them. She shouldn't go up. She was cafeteria staff, unauthorized to enter the medical floors after 9 p.m. Her shift supervisor had made that abundantly clear 3 months ago when she'd gotten written up for taking a wrong turn. But her feet moved anyway. The elevator climbed to the 4th floor, and Clara's mind raced back 7 years. Her brother Danny, gasping on their apartment floor. The ER doctors pumping him full of epinephrine. Nothing working. His lips turning blue. And then, that one paramedic, the older woman with gray streaks in her hair, who'd done something different. Something simple. Something that had saved Danny's life when everyone else had given up. The doors opened to chaos. At least 20 people in surgical scrubs crowded outside room 407. Through the glass wall, Clara could see a small girl on the bed, maybe 8 years old, surrounded by doctors in a desperate dance of syringes and monitors. The girl's skin had a grayish tint that Clara recognized immediately. Move, move. A surgeon in blood-speckled scrubs shoved past Clara, nearly knocking her into the wall. Where's Dr. Patterson? We need him now. But Clara wasn't looking at the surgeon. She was looking at the man standing completely still in the corner of the observation area. Matteo Ricci didn't look like the Mafia boss the hospital staff whispered about. He looked like a father watching his daughter die. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his dark hair disheveled, and his hands, rough, scarred hands that everyone said had killed men, were pressed flat against the glass, as if he could somehow push life back into the small body on that bed. "Sir, you need to step back," a nurse said gently, touching his shoulder. He didn't move, didn't blink. His gray eyes were locked on his daughter. Clara pushed closer, her heart hammering. Through the glass, she watched another doctor inject something into the girl's foreline. 5 seconds. 10. 15. The monitor remained flat. The girl wasn't breathing. "She's had 3 doses of epinephrine," a doctor said, his voice cracking. "Blood pressure's bottoming out. I don't understand. Standard anaphylaxis protocols should have worked by now." But it's not standard, Clara thought. Her hands were shaking now. She knew what was happening. She'd seen it before. Some people, very few, maybe 1 in 50,000, didn't respond to epinephrine during severe allergic reactions because their body's shock response was different. Danny had been one of them. And if Clara was right, this little girl was too. The solution wasn't more epinephrine. It was simpler. So much simpler. Clara's supervisor's voice echoed in her head. "Stay in your lane, Martinez. Cafeteria workers don't play doctor." But Danny's voice was louder. "You saved my life, Clara." That paramedic knew something the fancy doctors didn't. The girl had maybe 2 minutes left. Maybe less. Clara didn't remember making the decision. One moment she was standing in the hallway, and the next she was shoving through the crowd of medical staff. Someone grabbed her arm. A security guard she recognized from the parking lot. "Ma'am, you can't." "Let her through." Matteo Ricci's voice was quiet, but it cut through the chaos like a blade. Everyone froze. The Mafia boss was staring at Clara now, and his eyes held something she didn't expect. Hope. Desperate, drowning hope. "Let her through." The security guard released her immediately. Clara burst into room 407. 8 surgeons turned to stare at her. This woman in a stained cafeteria uniform who had no business being there. "Who the hell?" one started. Elevate her legs, Clara said, her voice steadier than she felt.
Now.
Get them higher than her heart. And turn her on her left side. That's not protocol for anaphylaxis, a female surgeon said, but her voice wavered. It's not standard anaphylaxis. Clara moved to the bedside, and surprisingly, the doctors parted for her. Maybe they heard the certainty in her voice. Maybe they were just out of ideas. Her body's in vasodilatory shock. The epinephrine can't raise her blood pressure because all her blood is pooling in her legs. You need to get it back to her heart and brain. Leg elevation, left lateral position. It's called the recovery position, and it works when nothing else does. For one terrible second, nobody moved. Then the lead surgeon, a man with silver hair and hands that had probably performed 10,000 surgeries, nodded. Do it. 3 doctors moved at once. They lifted the girl's legs, propping them up on pillows at a steep angle. 2 more carefully rolled her onto her left side, supporting her tiny frame. Clara held her breath. 5 seconds.
10.
The monitor beeped.
Once. Twice.
The girl's chest rose.
Fell.
Rose again. Her lips, which had been turning blue, began to pink. The grayish tint faded from her skin. The monitor's steady beeping filled the room like a choir. Oxygen saturation rising, someone whispered. Blood pressure stabilizing.
She's
breathing on her own. The room erupted in motion, doctors adjusting IVs, checking vitals, calling out numbers, but Clara stood frozen, staring at the little girl whose eyes were starting to flutter open. Through the glass, Matteo Ricci's knees buckled. A security guard caught him before he fell. Clara backed toward the door, her hands trembling now that the adrenaline was fading. She'd just broken about 15 hospital rules. She'd probably be fired, maybe even arrested for practicing medicine without a license. But the little girl was breathing. That was all that mattered. She slipped out of the room and headed for the elevator, hoping to disappear before anyone asked questions. Behind her, she heard the lead surgeon say, "Someone get that woman's name." She just did what 999 of us couldn't. Clara didn't look back. She just pressed the button for the basement level and prayed her hands would stop shaking before she had to face her supervisor. She had no idea that in saving one little girl's life, she'd just stepped into a world that would change everything she knew. The elevator doors closed, and Clara's reflection stared back at her, a 26-year-old waitress in a coffee-stained uniform who just caught the attention of the most dangerous man in Boston. At 3:17 a.m., while Lucia slept peacefully in the ICU, with her color finally returned, 3 hospital administrators gathered in a conference room with the lead surgeon, Dr. Raymond Mills. The story is simple, Dr. Margaret Chen, the hospital director, said, sliding a press release across the table. Our elite medical team employed advanced resuscitation techniques. Dr. Mills led the effort. No mention of the cafeteria worker. Dr. Mills stared at the paper, his jaw tight. That woman saved my patient's life. I'm not taking credit for her. You'll take credit, or you'll be explaining to the board why unqualified staff breached sterile environments, Chen interrupted coldly. We're already exposed to massive liability. Clara Martinez has 0 medical credentials. If the media finds out a waitress succeeded where our entire surgical team failed, this hospital will be a laughingstock. Lawsuits will bury us. Outside the conference room, 2 night shift nurses, Amy Rodriguez and her friend Beth, listened through the barely closed door. They exchanged glances, and Amy pulled out her phone. "What are you doing?" Beth whispered. "The right thing," Amy muttered, typing quickly. Matteo Ricci hadn't left his daughter's bedside. He sat in a chair beside her ICU bed, holding her small hand, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest like it was the most precious thing in the world. Because it was. His phone buzzed. An unknown number. Normally, he'd ignore it. But nothing about tonight was normal. The text message was brief. "Mr. Ricci, they're lying to you. The woman who saved Lucia was Clara Martinez, cafeteria worker. Administration is covering it up. She'll be at work tomorrow morning. 6 a.m. shift. She deserves the truth. A friend. Matteo read it 3 times. Then he forwarded it to his head of security, Vincent, with 2 words. Verify this. 20 minutes later, Vincent called back. It's true, boss. I pulled the security footage. The woman in the cafeteria uniform, Clara Martinez, 26, works night shifts in the basement cafe. She ran up there and did something the doctors couldn't figure out. I've got her employee file if you want it. Get it? Matteo's voice was quiet, but Vincent knew that tone. Someone was about to have a very bad day. The hospital administrators? Later. First, I meet Clara Martinez. Clara made it home at 2 a.m., collapsed on her second-hand couch, and didn't sleep at all. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that little girl's blue lips, heard the flatline monitor, felt her own heart racing as she'd burst into that room. She should have been terrified about losing her job. Instead, she kept thinking, what if I'd stayed downstairs? What if I'd been too scared? Her phone alarm went off at 5:15 a.m. Another shift. Clara dragged herself up, pulled on her spare uniform, and caught 2 buses back to St. Augustine's. The cafeteria was nearly empty when she arrived at 5:50 a.m. Her supervisor, Rita, was restocking napkins and barely looked up. You're late yesterday's incident report, Rita said flatly. 4th floor complained about unauthorized personnel. Clara's stomach dropped. I can explain. Save it for HR. They want to see you at 9-inch. Rita walked away, shaking her head. I warned you, Martinez. Stay in your lane. Clara's hands trembled as she tied her apron. She'd saved a child's life, and she was going to be fired for it. She was wiping down tables when the cafeteria doors opened at 6:47 a.m. 3 men in dark suits walked in first, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. They weren't large men, but they moved like predators, scanning exits, checking corners. Clara recognized the type from her neighborhood. Dangerous people who didn't need to announce it. Then Matteo Ricci walked in. He looked different in daylight. Still tired, still wrinkled suit, but there was something magnetic about him. Everyone in the cafeteria froze. The 2 early shift cooks, Rita, the janitor, even the elderly man reading a newspaper in the corner. Matteo's eyes found Clara immediately. She wanted to run. Instead, she stood there, cloth in hand, frozen like a deer in headlights. He walked straight to her. His security stopped 5 feet back, but Matteo came close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his gray eyes, and something else. Something that looked almost like wonder. Clara Martinez? She nodded, unable to speak. To her absolute shock, Matteo Ricci extended his hand. Not a threat. An offer. She shook it hesitantly. His grip was warm, firm, but gentle. My daughter is alive because of you, he said simply. The doctors told me their advanced techniques saved her. But I know the truth. I saw you run into that room. I watched you do in 30 seconds what they couldn't do in 30 minutes. Clara's cheeks flushed. I remembered something from when my brother. You saved her life. Matteo's voice was quiet but absolute. So, I'm here to ask, what can I give you? Money? A house? A job? Name it. Anything in this world that I can provide, it's yours. The cafeteria was dead silent. Rita's mouth hung open. The cooks had stopped moving entirely. Clara swallowed hard. Mr. Ricci, I don't want anything. I just did what anyone would have done. No, Matteo shook his head slowly. Anyone would have stayed downstairs where they belonged. Anyone would have been too afraid to challenge doctors. You ran toward danger to save a stranger's child. That's not anyone, that's rare. Clara felt tears prickling her eyes. Your daughter reminded me of my little brother. I couldn't do nothing. Something shifted in Matteo's expression. For just a moment, the dangerous Mafia boss disappeared, and Clara saw only a father who'd almost lost everything. At least let me pay your rent for a year, he said. Clear your debts. Something. I'm okay, really. Clara glanced at Rita, who looked like she might faint. I should get back to work before I get in more trouble. Mateo turned to look at Rita, and the woman actually stepped backward. This woman, Mateo said clearly, is not in trouble. She's a hero. If anyone suggests otherwise, they'll answer to me personally. Understood. Rita nodded, so fast her head might have fallen off. Mateo looked back at Clara, studying her face like he was trying to solve a puzzle. In his world, everyone wanted something. Everyone had an angle. But this woman, this poor cafeteria worker who'd saved his daughter, wanted nothing. It fascinated him. And somewhere deep in his chest, in a place he'd thought died years ago, it moved him. I won't forget this, he said finally. And I always pay my debts, Clara Martinez. Always. He turned and walked out, his security following like shadows. The moment the doors closed, the cafeteria erupted in whispers. But Clara just stood there, staring at her trembling hands, wondering what she'd just gotten herself into. Outside, sitting in his black Mercedes, Mateo pulled out his phone and called Vincent. The cover-up? Vincent asked. Handle it. Quietly. I want the truth in every newspaper by noon. He hung up and stared at the hospital building. Something about Clara Martinez unsettled him, but not in a dangerous way. In a way that reminded him there were still good people in the world. People worth protecting. By noon, Clara's face was everywhere. It started with a leaked hospital memo that hit Twitter at 9:32 a.m. Cafeteria worker saves Mafia boss's daughter after 999 doctors fail. Someone had attached a grainy photo from the security cameras, Clara in her uniform, running through the hospital corridor. Within an hour, it had 50,000 retweets. By lunchtime, every news outlet in Boston was running the story. Local stations showed the hospital exterior while reporters spoke breathlessly about the miracle worker in the basement. Cable news picked it up next. The waitress who knew what elite surgeons didn't. Clara knew none of this. She was on the bus heading to her second job, a small diner called Rosie's on the south side, scrolling through increasingly frantic texts from her roommate, Maria. Clara, you're on the news. Channel 5 just showed your picture. There are people outside our apartment building. Call me right now. Clara's hands went numb. She clicked on the link Maria sent. There she was. Her employee photo from St. Augustine's Hospital, plastered across a news website with the headline, Local Hero, Clara Martinez saves 8-year-old after medical team fails. The article had quotes from anonymous hospital sources praising her quick thinking. Someone had even dug up her high school yearbook photo. The comments section had already exploded, hundreds of people calling her a hero, an angel, a miracle worker. Clara felt like she might throw up. She wasn't a hero. She was just someone who remembered something about her brother's medical emergency. She didn't want attention. She didn't want cameras or reporters or strangers knowing her name. But it was too late. Rosie's Diner was a 40-year-old establishment with cracked vinyl booths and a jukebox that only played songs from the 1970s. Clara had worked there part-time for 3 years, covering weekend breakfast shifts to supplement her hospital income. When she walked in at 1:15 p.m., every head turned. There she is. Tommy, the line cook, shouted from the kitchen window. Boston's own superhero. Clara's face burned. Tommy, stop. Are you kidding? You're famous. He waved a spatula at the small TV mounted in the corner, where a news anchor was indeed talking about her. Rosie's been getting calls all morning. People want to know if you're working today. Clara tied her apron with shaking fingers. I just want to do my shift. But the moment she stepped onto the floor, she realized normal was over. A woman in booth 3 was filming her on her phone. 2 teenagers near the window whispered and giggled, one of them pulling up Clara's photo on Instagram. An older man at the counter watched her with something like awe. Clara. Rosie herself emerged from the back office, a tough-as-nails woman in her 60s who rarely showed emotion. Honey, is it true? You really saved Matteo Ricci's little girl? Clara nodded reluctantly. Rosie's eyes glistened. My God. You know what that man could have done if she'd died? Half the city would have burned. She grabbed Clara's face in both hands. You didn't just save one life. You saved dozens. Maybe hundreds. Clara hadn't thought of it that way. The weight of it pressed down on her chest. The lunch rush was unlike anything she'd experienced. People didn't just come for food. They came to see her, to take pictures, to ask questions. How did you know what to do? Were you scared? Is it true Matteo Ricci offered you $1 million? Can I get a selfie? Clara tried to stay professional, to just take orders and serve food, but it felt like being in a fishbowl. Every move she made was watched, photographed, whispered about. A group of college girls in booth 5 kept giggling and pointing. A man in a business suit asked her to sign his napkin. An elderly woman touched her arm and said, "God works through people like you, dear." By 3 p.m., there were people outside the diner who weren't even coming in, just standing on the sidewalk, phones out, trying to catch a glimpse through the windows. "This is insane," Maria, her roommate, said when she called during Clara's break. "Clara, there are at least 20 people outside our building. Some guy with a camera rang our buzzer, asking for interviews. I didn't let anyone up, but this is crazy. What are we going to do?" Clara sat in Rosie's small back office, head in her hands. "I don't know. I didn't think it would be like this. Everyone's talking about you. You're trending on Twitter. Someone made a TikTok that has 2 million views. There's even a hashtag Clara Saves Lives." Clara wanted to cry. Or disappear. Maybe both. When her shift ended at 6 p.m., she tried to leave through the back door, but 3 people were waiting there too. One of them, a young guy with a podcast microphone, rushed toward her. "Clara, just 5 minutes. Tell us how you learned." She pushed past him, walking fast toward the bus stop. But everywhere she looked, she felt eyes on her. A group of teenagers recognized her and started following at a distance, filming. A car slowed down, the driver gawking. By the time she reached her apartment building, there were even more people than Maria had described. Maybe 30 of them, clustered near the entrance. Some held phones. Others just stood there, curious, hoping for a glimpse of the woman who'd saved the Mafia boss's daughter. Clara pulled her hood up and tried to slip inside, but someone shouted, "That's her." The crowd surged. Questions flew from every direction. Camera flashes blinded her. She fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking so badly she dropped them twice. Finally, she got inside and slammed the door behind her, leaning against it as her heart hammered. Maria met her in the stairwell. "Are you okay?" Clara shook her head. She wasn't okay. 24 hours ago, she was invisible, just another poor girl working 2 jobs to make rent. Now she was a headline, a hashtag,
A spectacle.
and somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered, "This is only the beginning." She had no idea how right that voice was, or how dark things were about to become. Day 3 began with a text message that changed everything. Clara woke at 6 a.m. to her phone buzzing nonstop. Dozens of messages. Hundreds of notifications. Her social media accounts, which she barely used, were exploding. Confused, she opened Twitter. The top trending topic was her name. But this time, the posts weren't praising her. At Boston Truth Seeker. Breaking. Medical expert says Clara Martinez's miracle cure is medically impossible. Something doesn't add up. Hashtag what really happened. At Real Talk Daily. Source close to Ricci family claims Martinez had access to Lucia before the attack. Coincidence? I think not. Hashtag inside job. At Crime Beat Boston. Exclusive documents suggest Martinez may have caused the allergic reaction to play hero. Full story coming. Clara's blood turned to ice. Her hands shook so badly, she nearly dropped her phone. "No," she whispered.
No, no, no.
She clicked on one of the links. A gossip blog called Boston Underground had posted an article with a headline, "Did Clara Martinez poison a child to become a hero?" The article was vicious. It claimed an anonymous medical source said the timeline didn't make sense. It suggested Clara had somehow gained access to Lucia earlier that night, triggered the allergic reaction, and then swooped in to save her for attention. It even included what looked like official medical documents, charts and reports with St. Augustine's hospital letterhead, showing inconsistencies in Lucia's treatment timeline. Clara felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. "This isn't real," she said out loud to her empty room. "None of this is real." But it didn't matter if it was real. The internet had already decided. By 8 a.m., the story had spread everywhere. Influencers with millions of followers were weighing in. A popular true crime podcaster dedicated an emergency episode to the Clara Martinez conspiracy. A TikTok with 3 million views showed someone analyzing her body language in the security footage, claiming she looked guilty. The comment sections were brutal. "I knew something was off about this story. Too perfect. She probably needed money and made a deal with the Mafia. Poor kid was probably fine until this psycho showed up. Lock her up before she hurts someone else." Clara sat on her bathroom floor, crying so hard she couldn't breathe. Maria had already left for work, which meant Clara was alone with the nightmare unfolding on her phone screen. How had this happened? 2 days ago, she was a hero. Now she was a villain.
Her phone rang.
An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Clara Martinez?" A woman's voice, cold and professional. "Yes. This is Jennifer Walsh from Channel 7 News. We'd like to give you an opportunity to respond to the allegations that you orchestrated." Clara hung up, her hands trembling. The phone rang again immediately. Different number. She turned it off completely. At Rosie's diner, things had shifted overnight. Clara arrived for her 11 a.m. shift to find the atmosphere completely different from yesterday. No one smiled. No one asked for photos. Instead, people stared at her with suspicion, with disgust. Tommy, the cook who'd called her a hero yesterday, wouldn't make eye contact. "Tommy?" Clara approached the kitchen window. "Did you see those articles? They're lying. I would never." "I don't want to get involved," he muttered, turning back to the grill. Rosie pulled Clara into the back office. The older woman's face was drawn, worried. "Clara, honey, I don't believe those stories for a second. But," she gestured toward the dining room, "half my regulars called to say they won't come in if you're working. I've got people on Facebook saying they'll boycott the diner. I can't afford." "You're firing me," Clara's voice was hollow. "I'm giving you paid leave. Just until this blows over." Rosie's eyes were sad.
"I'm sorry."
"I really am." Clara untied her apron with numb fingers. "It's okay. I understand." She didn't understand. But what else could she say? Walking home, Clara felt eyes on her everywhere. A mother pulled her child closer when Clara passed. A group of teenagers recognized her and started filming, one of them shouting, "Baby poisoner?" Clara walked faster, tears streaming down her face. Back at her apartment building, someone had spray-painted words on the front door. "Murderer lives here." Clara stared at it, feeling everything inside her crack. She made it upstairs and locked herself in her apartment. Her phone, turned back on, showed 47 missed calls, 200+ texts, and thousands of social media notifications. Most of them were hateful. Death threats. People saying they hoped she'd burn in hell. One text stood out, though, from a number she didn't recognize. "They want you to suffer. Don't give them the satisfaction. The truth will come out. A friend." But what truth? Clara had no proof of anything. She didn't understand how this had happened or who would want to destroy her like this. She curled up on her couch, clutching a pillow, and let herself break down completely. Outside her window, news vans were parking on the street, reporters setting up cameras. The circus was just beginning. What Clara couldn't know, was that this wasn't random. In a luxury penthouse across the city, 3 men in expensive suits were watching the chaos unfold on multiple screens, smiling. "The Ricci family looks weak," one of them said, sipping whiskey. Their precious savior is a fraud. Let's see how Mateo handles this. Another man laughed. By the time we're done, Clara Martinez will wish she'd never heard the name Lucia Ricci. The third man pulled out his phone and made a call. Phase 2. Leak the hospital surveillance footage, the edited version. Make sure every news station has it by tonight. They had spent 2 days carefully constructing this narrative. Fake medical reports. Paid experts bribed influencers. All to turn the hero into a villain. And it was working perfectly. Clara fell asleep on her couch around 3 p.m., exhausted from crying. When she woke up 2 hours later, her phone was ringing again. This time, it was a number she recognized. St. Augustine's Hospital. Miss Martinez, this is hospital administration. We need you to come in immediately to discuss your unauthorized actions and the allegations. Clara hung up. She couldn't do this anymore. She couldn't face another person who thought she was a monster. She looked at the bottle of sleeping pills on her nightstand, prescribed for her chronic insomnia. For just a moment, a dark thought crossed her mind. What if I had just disappeared? But then she thought of Lucia. That little girl with the blue lips who'd looked so small and fragile in that hospital bed. Clara had saved her. She knew she had. No matter what anyone said, no matter what lies they told, she'd saved that child's life. And somewhere, someone had to know the truth. She just had to hold on long enough to find them. Mateo Ricci's estate sat on 12 acres in the wealthy outskirts of Boston, a fortress disguised as a mansion. Inside the oak-paneled study, 5 men sat around a table while Lucia slept peacefully upstairs, finally home from the hospital. Vincent, Mateo's head of security, slid a tablet across the table. Boss, you need to see this. Mateo looked up from the medical reports he'd been studying. On the screen was a news article. Clara Martinez, hero or con artist. It's everywhere, said Marco, Mateo's oldest advisor, a man who'd served his father before him. The media's turning on her. Questions about her timing, her access, her motives. Mateo's jaw tightened. The media is full of vultures. They built her up, now they tear her down. It's what they do. Maybe Carlo, the family's consigliere and legal mind, leaned forward. But they raised valid points. Her timing was remarkably convenient. She appeared at the exact moment Lucia was dying. She knew exactly what to do when an entire medical team was stumped. And now we discover she's drowning in debt, $40,000 in medical bills from her brother's treatment, 3 months behind on rent, collection agencies calling her daily. So she's poor, Mateo said flatly. That's not a crime. No, but it's motive, Carlo pressed. A desperate woman in debt sees an opportunity. Maybe someone approached her, paid her to create a crisis she could solve, making herself invaluable to you. It's happened before, people trying to get close to this family through manufactured crises. Vincent nodded reluctantly. I hate to say it, but the timeline bothers me too. She was downstairs in the cafeteria, yet somehow she heard about Lucia's specific symptoms. The 4th floor is soundproof. How did she know exactly what was happening? Mateo's hands curled into fists on the table. He wanted to defend Clara, the woman whose humility and genuine concern had moved him. But these men had kept him alive for 20 years by being paranoid, by questioning everything. What are you suggesting? Mateo asked quietly. A plant, Marco said bluntly. The Calabrese family has been trying to undermine us for months. What better way than to insert someone into your inner circle through Lucia? They stage an allergic reaction, their agent saves her, you're grateful, you lay your guard down, and boom, they have access to everything. The room fell silent. Mateo thought of Clara's face in the cafeteria, the genuine shock when he'd thanked her, the way she'd refused his money, the tears in her eyes when she'd mentioned her brother. Every instinct he'd honed over 40 years told him she was real. But instincts had been wrong before. And the cost of being wrong about this was Lucia's life. Vincent, Mateo said finally, I want a complete background check. And I mean complete. Every detail of Clara Martinez's life from birth to yesterday. Bank records, medical history, phone records, security footage from her apartment building for the past 6 months. Talk to her neighbors, her former employers, her teachers. If she's connected to any of our enemies, I want to know. Already started, Vincent said, tapping his tablet. Should have a full report by tomorrow morning. Good, Matteo stood, signaling the meeting's end. Until then, no one approaches her. No one threatens her. And for God's sake, someone find out who's behind this smear campaign. Those fake medical documents, the coordinated media attack, that's not organic. Someone's orchestrating this. You think someone's targeting her? Carlo asked, surprised. I think someone's targeting me through her, Matteo corrected. They know I'm grateful to her. They know Lucia asks about her every day. So they destroy Clara's reputation, make me look weak for defending her, or make me look foolish if she turns out to be a fraud. Either way, they win.
Marco nodded slowly.
The Calabrese angle makes sense. This has Sal's fingerprints all over it, sophisticated, media-savvy, designed for maximum humiliation. Then we hit back, Matteo said coldly. But not until we know the truth about Clara. I won't defend someone who put my daughter in danger. But I also won't abandon someone who saved her because of paranoid speculation. 24 hours later, Vincent returned with a 3-inch thick file. Matteo sat alone in his study at 2 a.m., reading every page. The life of Clara Martinez, laid bare. Born in Boston to Mexican immigrants, father died when she was 12, construction accident. Mother worked 2 jobs as a housekeeper until she died of breast cancer when Clara was 19. Raised her younger brother Danny alone while finishing community college. No degree, had to drop out to work when Danny got sick. Danny's medical emergency 7 years ago, severe allergic reaction to antibiotics. Misdiagnosed initially. Nearly died. A paramedic named Sarah Chen had performed the exact technique Clara used on Lucia. The technique that saved both their lives. Employment history, steady, unremarkable. Cafeteria worker, waitress, grocery store clerk. Never fired. Good reviews. Quiet. Reliable. Financial records. Devastating. Medical debt from Danny's treatment, swallowing every penny she made. But no unusual deposits. No offshore accounts. No secret income. Just poverty and debt, and endless work. Phone records, calls to bill collectors, her roommate, Danny, her supervisor. No calls to any known criminal organizations. No burner phones. Nothing suspicious. Security footage from her apartment showed her leaving for work, coming home exhausted, occasionally buying groceries. No secret meetings. No suspicious visitors. Interviews with neighbors. Quiet girl, always polite, takes care of her brother, helped my daughter with homework once, never causes trouble. Former teachers. Sweet kid, worked hard, smart but had to drop out due to family issues. I always thought she'd go far if she'd had the chance. Current employers. Best worker we have, never complains, always picks up extra shifts. Vincent had even tracked down Sarah Chun, the paramedic who'd saved Danny. She confirmed teaching Clara about alternative anaphylaxis treatments, impressed by the young woman's desire to learn everything about her brother's condition. Matteo closed the file and rubbed his eyes. There was nothing. No connection to any criminal organization. No suspicious activity. No motive beyond the desperate poverty of someone trying to survive in an expensive city while drowning in her brother's medical debt. Clara Martinez was exactly what she appeared to be, a poor, kind woman who'd recognized symptoms from her brother's near-death experience and acted to save a stranger's child. His advisors were wrong. His instincts were right. Matteo picked up his phone and called Vincent. The investigation into Clara? Yes, boss. She's clean.
Completely.
Now find out who's really behind this smear campaign. I want names, locations, and financial trails. And I want them by tomorrow night. You got it. Matteo hung up and walked upstairs to Lucia's room. His daughter slept peacefully, her breathing steady and strong. Because of Clara. He'd been in this business long enough to recognize the rare, genuine article when he saw it. Clara Martinez had no agenda.
No ángel.
She was just good, truly, genuinely good, in a world that punished goodness. But that world was about to learn something important. Matteo Ricci protected the people who protected his family. And heaven help anyone who stood in his way. Day 4 felt like drowning in slow motion. Clara hadn't slept more than 2 hours. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the comments, thousands of strangers calling her a monster, a fraud, a murderer. Her phone was off, but it didn't matter. The words were burned into her brain. At 7 a.m., she forced herself to get up. She needed groceries, needed to feel normal, even if normal no longer existed. The moment she stepped outside her apartment building, 3 cameras flashed. Clara, is it true you had access to Lucia Ricci before the incident? Did the Mafia pay you to stage the rescue? How do you respond to doctors saying your technique was medically impossible? 2 paparazzi blocked the sidewalk, cameras clicking rapid fire. Clara pulled her hood up and tried to push past, but they followed, shouting questions, getting in her face. Please, she whispered. Please just leave me alone. Is that guilt we're hearing? Why won't you defend yourself? Clara broke into a run. They chased her for 2 blocks before she ducked into a convenience store. The clerk, a middle-aged Indian man named Raj who'd always been friendly, looked at her with cold eyes. You need to leave, he said flatly. Clara froze. What? I don't want trouble. The cameras, the reporters, they're bad for business. Please go. I just need milk and bread. Leave. Now Raj pointed at the door. Clara's eyes burned with tears. She turned and walked out, empty-handed, while the paparazzi waited like wolves outside. Back at her apartment building, Mrs. Chun from 3B was in the lobby, collecting her mail. She'd always been kind to Clara, had given her homemade dumplings last Christmas. Mrs. Chun, Clara said softly.
Eat.
The elderly woman looked at her, and Clara saw something she'd never seen before. Fear. Stay away from my grandson, Mrs. Chun said quietly. I don't know what you did, but I don't want him near you. I didn't do anything wrong. That's what they all say. Mrs. Chun hurried toward the stairs, clutching her mail like a shield. Clara stood alone in the lobby, feeling like the walls were closing in. Upstairs, she found a note taped to her door. Handwritten, all capital letters. We know what you did. Leave before something bad happens. Clara's hands shook as she tore it down. She checked the hallway. Empty. No cameras in this old building. No way to know who'd left it. She locked herself inside and sat on the floor with her back against the door. Her phone, turned back on to check for messages from Maria or Danny, showed 300+ missed calls. Most from reporters, but one from her landlord. With shaking fingers, she listened to the voicemail. Miss Martinez, this is Gerald Thompson. I've received complaints from multiple tenants about the media presence outside the building. They feel unsafe. I'm sorry, but I'm going to need you to vacate the premises within 30 days. I'll return your security deposit. Again, I'm sorry, but I have to think of the other residents. Clara let the phone drop. Evicted. She was being evicted from the only home she'd known for 3 years. Everything was falling apart. Around 2 p.m., Danny called. Her 20-year-old brother, the reason she'd recognized Lucia's symptoms, the person who mattered most in the world. Clara, what the hell is going on? His voice was tight with worry. People at my campus are talking about you. Someone recognized your last name and asked if we're related. Are you okay?
I'm fine, Clara lied.
You're not fine. I saw the articles. Clara, those things they're saying. They're lies, Danny. All of it. I just tried to help, and now everyone thinks I'm a monster. Her voice cracked. I saved that little girl. I swear I did. Just like Sarah saved you. I know you did, Danny's voice softened. Clara, you're the best person I know. You raised me when you were barely an adult yourself. You sacrificed everything for me. Anyone who knows you knows you'd never hurt a kid. Tears streamed down Clara's face. Then why does everyone hate me? Because people are cruel. And stupid. And they believe whatever the internet tells them, he paused. Come stay with me. My roommate's gone for the semester. You can crash here until this blows over. Clara wanted to say yes. Wanted to run away from Boston, from the cameras, from the hate. But Danny was 3 hours away in Providence, trying to finish the nursing degree she'd helped him get into. She couldn't disrupt his life with her chaos. I can't bring this mess to you, she said. The reporters would follow. You'd become part of the story. I don't care. I do, Clara wiped her eyes. I'll be okay. I promise. After they hung up, Clara walked to her bathroom and stared at herself in the mirror. She looked hollow.
Exhausted.
Broken. Maybe everyone was right. Maybe she should just disappear. Change her name. Move to a different state. Start over where nobody knew her face. But then she thought of Lucia. That little girl with dark curls and pale skin, lying so still on that hospital bed. The way her chest had finally risen after Clara's intervention. The pink returning to her lips. The steady beep of her heart monitor. Clara had saved a life. She knew it in her bones. No matter what anyone said, no matter what lies they spread, she'd done something good that night. And somewhere, that little girl was alive because Clara hadn't been too afraid to act. The thought settled something inside her. A tiny spark of strength in the darkness. She wouldn't run. Not yet. Not while the truth was still out there, buried under lies. Clara straightened up, splashed cold water on her face, and made a decision. She'd survive today. And tomorrow. And the day after that. She'd survive until someone somewhere believed her. What she didn't know was that someone already did. And he was about to go to war for her. Across the city, in a penthouse office with a view of Boston Harbor, Matteo Ricci laid a file on his desk in front of 3 men. The Calabrese family, he said coldly. Sal's PR firm orchestrated the entire smear campaign. Fake documents, paid influencers, bribed reporters. They wanted to humiliate me through Clara. They wanted to destroy an innocent woman to make me look weak. Vincent cracked his knuckles. What do you want us to do, boss? Matteo's smile was razor-sharp. I want to remind Boston who really runs the city. And I want Clara Martinez's name cleared by tomorrow morning. And the Calabrese family? They're about to have a very bad week. Day 5 brought a new nightmare. One that reached far beyond social media and gossip blogs. Clara woke to Maria shaking her shoulder. Clara, wake up. You need to see this. Her roommate's face was pale, scared in a way Clara hadn't seen before. Maria held up her laptop, showing the Boston Business Journal's homepage. The headline made Clara's blood freeze. Ricci family scandal. Did Mafia boss stage daughter's medical crisis for public sympathy? The article was different from the tabloid trash. This was written in careful, professional language by respected business journalists. It quoted sources close to the investigation, suggesting Matteo Ricci had orchestrated Lucia's allergic reaction as an elaborate PR stunt, hiring Clara Martinez to play the hero, gaining public sympathy to mask his family's recent financial troubles and legal pressures. This doesn't make sense, Clara whispered, reading faster. Why would anyone think? Keep reading, Maria said grimly. The article laid out a conspiracy theory that sounded almost believable. Matteo Ricci's legitimate businesses had been under federal investigation. His political connections were fraying. He needed positive press, humanization. So he staged a medical emergency for his daughter, hired a desperate, debt-ridden woman to save her, and used the resulting media attention to rehabilitate his image. Clara Martinez, the article suggested, was either a willing participant paid to play her part, or an unwitting pawn manipulated by one of Boston's most dangerous crime families. They're saying I worked with him, Clara said, her voice hollow. That we planned it together. It gets worse, Maria scrolled down. Look who's sharing it. The article had been picked up by politicians, business leaders, and civic organizations. A city councilwoman had tweeted it with a comment. If true, This represents a dangerous manipulation of public trust. Full investigation needed. The Massachusetts Attorney General's office had issued a statement saying they were reviewing the matter. Someone had taken the attack to a whole new level, from internet gossip to legitimate institutional scrutiny. In his office at Ricci Industries, the legitimate construction company that fronted his less legal operations, Matteo read the same article with cold fury. His lawyer, Carlo, paced in front of the desk. This is Sal Calabrese.
Has to be.
He's leveraging his political connections, spreading the conspiracy through business channels. Your competitors are already whispering about it in boardrooms. My competitors are cowards who smile to my face and stab me in the back, Matteo said quietly. But they're not stupid enough to do this without protection. Who's backing Sal? Vincent entered, closing the door behind him. We traced the PR firm. They're getting funding from a shell corporation tied to 3 city council members and a state senator, all people we've had conflicts with over zoning contracts and development deals. This isn't just a mafia rivalry, boss. This is political and business interests using Sal as their weapon. So they kill multiple birds with one stone, Carlo mused. Humiliate you, destroy your public image, raise questions about your businesses, and give law enforcement an excuse to investigate you more aggressively. Meanwhile, Clara Martinez is collateral damage, a poor woman they're willing to ruin to get to you. Matteo's jaw tightened. How long until this hits the major networks? It already has. Vincent turned on the TV mounted on the wall. A CNN anchor was discussing a story with a panel of experts. Raises serious questions about organized crime's influence on media narratives. If Matteo Ricci did stage this incident, it represents a sophisticated manipulation of public sympathy that we haven't seen before. Matteo turned it off. They're not just attacking me. They're attacking Lucia. My daughter nearly died, and they're turning it into a conspiracy theory. They're also destroying Clara, Vincent added. The Attorney General's office announced an investigation into her. They're calling it fraud, conspiracy, reckless endangerment. She could face criminal charges. For a long moment, Matteo sat in silence. In his world, attacks were common. Betrayals were expected. He'd survived worse than media scandals. But Clara Martinez wasn't part of his world. She was an innocent woman who'd saved his daughter and was now being crucified for it, caught in the crossfire of a war she didn't even know existed. How bad is it for her? Matteo asked quietly. Vincent hesitated. Bad. She lost both jobs. Getting evicted. Can't leave her apartment without being mobbed. The internet's calling for her arrest. And now with a criminal investigation, he trailed off. She's alone, Matteo said. No resources. No protection. No way to fight back. Which is exactly what they want, Carlo said. Break her spirit, make her crack, maybe even testify against you to save herself. It's textbook intimidation. Matteo stood and walked to the window overlooking Boston. Somewhere out there, Clara was probably terrified, probably wondering why her good deed had destroyed her entire life. Boss, Vincent prompted. What's the play? Matteo turned back to face them. We end this. Tonight. I want everything, and I mean everything, on the Calabrese family's operations. The PR firm, the shell corporations, the politicians they've bought. Financial records, wire transfers, emails, recorded conversations. All of it. That kind of dirt will take days to compile. Then we have 12 hours. Matteo interrupted. Because tomorrow morning, I'm calling a press conference. And I'm going to burn down everyone who did this.
Carlo frowned.
A press conference? That's risky. You'll be directly in the public eye. Good. Let them see me. Let them see a father defending the woman who saved his daughter's life. Matteo's voice was steel. They want to play in the media?
Fine.
But they're about to learn that I don't lose. Ever. Vincent nodded slowly, a grim smile forming. I'll make some calls. The kind of information you want. It's going to get ugly. It already is ugly, Matteo said. We're just making sure the right people pay for it. Across town, in a private club where Boston's elite gathered, Sal Calabrese raised a glass of expensive scotch with 3 men in tailored suits, a city councilman, a real estate developer, and a state senator. To Matteo Ricci's downfall, Sal toasted. By this time next week, he'll be radioactive. No political protection, no business legitimacy, no public sympathy. Just a washed-up gangster who used a sick kid for PR. And the Martinez woman? The senator asked. Sal shrugged. Collateral damage. She'll probably be in jail within a month. Conspiracy charges, fraud. We've laid enough groundwork that prosecutors will have to pursue it. Do you think Ricci will retaliate? The developer asked nervously. With what?
Sal laughed.
His reputation's in tatters. His political allies are distancing themselves. He's got nothing. This is checkmate. The men clinked glasses, confident in their victory. None of them noticed the waiter in the corner, one of Vincent's men, recording every word on a device hidden in his jacket pocket. The war was just beginning. And Matteo Ricci had never lost a war. Vincent's team worked through the night like surgical instruments dissecting a body, precise, thorough, and coldly efficient. By dawn of day 6, Matteo's conference table was covered with laptops, folders, and printed documents. 5 of his best investigators sat exhausted around the table, but their eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of a successful hunt. Talk to me, Matteo said, entering with 2 hours of sleep and a dangerously calm demeanor. Vincent stood, clicking a remote that brought up a presentation on the wall screen. The PR firm is called Strategic Communications Group. Legit on the surface, they handle crisis management for corporations and politicians. But look deeper. The screen showed a complex web of connections. SCG is owned by a shell company registered in Delaware. That shell company is funded by 3 sources: a real estate consortium, a political action committee, and, here's the kicker, Calabrese Family Ventures. Sal's legitimate business front, Marco noted. Exactly, Vincent clicked to the next slide, financial records. Over the past 6 months, the Calabrese family has funneled $23 million into SCG. The money trail is carefully hidden, but we found it. Wire transfers, laundered through 5 different accounts, but it all leads back to Sal. Matteo leaned forward. What did they pay for? Everything. Another click. A timeline appeared. 3 months ago, SCG started building a narrative framework, fake social media accounts, bot networks, paid influencers on retainer. They were preparing for an opportunity. When Lucia got sick and Clara saved her, they activated everything within hours. Vincent pulled up screenshots of internal emails his hackers had obtained. Look at this. The day after Clara saved Lucia, SCG held an emergency strategy meeting. Their notes literally say, turn hero into villain, destroy credibility, make Ricci look weak or complicit. They planned this, Matteo said, his voice dangerously quiet. Down to every detail, Vincent showed more evidence. The fake medical documents? Created by a former hospital administrator SCG hired, specifically for this. The anonymous medical experts quoted in articles? 3 doctors who lost their licenses and needed money. SCG paid them $10,000 each for statements. The coordinated media blitz? SCG has relationships with 12 major outlets and personally pitched the conspiracy angle. Carlo whistled low. This is sophisticated. Professional. Because it's not just Sal, Vincent continued, pulling up photos. These are the men backing him. 3 faces appeared on screen: City Councilman Richard Hayes, real estate mogul Patrick Sullivan, and State Senator Brian Foster. They've wanted you out of Boston's power structure for years, Vincent explained. You've blocked their development deals, exposed their corruption, and generally made their lives difficult. Clara was their perfect weapon, an innocent civilian they could turn into a scandal that would drag you down. Matteo studied the faces. He knew these men, had done business with some of them. Hayes had smiled at him at a charity gala last month. Show me proof of their involvement, Matteo said. Vincent grinned. We recorded their celebration last night at the Beacon Club. He played the audio. Sal's voice filled the room. To Matteo Ricci's downfall. By this time next week, he'll be radioactive. The conversation continued, the men laughing, planning, celebrating Clara's destruction as collateral damage. When it finished, the room was silent. That's conspiracy, fraud, and criminal defamation, Carlo said finally. We could take this to the FBI. No, Matteo said firmly. The FBI takes months. Clara doesn't have months. She's being destroyed right now, today, while bureaucrats shuffle papers. So, what's the play? Marco asked. Matteo stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city he'd controlled for 2 decades. We go public. Hard and fast. Tomorrow morning, I hold a press conference. We release everything. The financial records proving the conspiracy, the emails showing premeditation, the audio of them celebrating. We don't just defend Clara. We expose everyone who tried to destroy her. That puts you in direct confrontation with some of the most powerful people in Boston, Carlo warned. Politicians, business leaders. Good, Matteo interrupted. Let them know what happens when they use innocent people as weapons against me. Vincent nodded approvingly. The media will eat this up. The conspiracy angle they've been pushing? It'll flip. Suddenly, it's a real conspiracy, just not the one they reported. What about the Calabrese family? Marco asked. Sal won't take this lying down. Matteo's smile was cold. Sal is about to have bigger problems. Vincent, I want the FBI to receive anonymous tips about every illegal operation Calabrese is running. Tax fraud, money laundering, racketeering, gift wrap it, and drop it on their doorstep. If they want to involve law enforcement in our business, let's see how they enjoy federal attention. Consider it done, Vincent said. And the politicians? Carlo pressed. Hayes, Foster, Sullivan, they have protection.
Connections.
Not anymore, Matteo turned back to face them. Those recorded conversations will end their careers. Hayes is up for re-election. Foster chairs the Ethics Committee, ironic considering. Sullivan's company is publicly traded. Once this hits the news, they'll be too busy saving themselves to come after me. Marco nodded slowly. It's risky, but it could work. You're essentially declaring war on multiple fronts. They declared war when they went after Clara, Matteo said flatly. I'm just finishing it. At 3 p.m., Matteo made a call he'd been putting off. The phone rang 3 times before a cautious voice answered. Hello. Miss Martinez, this is Matteo Ricci. Please don't hang up. Silence. Then, how did you get this number? I have resources, Matteo said. But I'm not calling to threaten or intimidate you. I'm calling because I know what's being done to you. And I know who's doing it. I don't understand. The smear campaign, the conspiracy theories, all of it is orchestrated by my enemies. You saved my daughter, and they're using you to destroy me. You're caught in a war you didn't start and don't deserve. Clara's voice was hollow. Why are you telling me this? Because tomorrow morning, I'm holding a press conference to clear your name. I have evidence, proof of who created the lies, who paid for them, and why. I'm going to expose every person involved. Why would you do that? Matteo paused, surprised by the question. Because you saved Lucia's life. And because what they're doing to you is wrong. People like you don't do things just because they're right, Clara said quietly. What do you want from me? Matteo smiled despite himself. Even broken and terrified, she saw clearly. I want you to survive this, Miss Martinez. That's all. Stay strong for one more day. By tomorrow afternoon, the truth will be out there. And if no one believes it, they will, Matteo said with absolute certainty. Because I'm very good at making people believe what I want them to believe. He hung up before she could respond. Vincent looked at him questioningly. Think she'll trust you? No, Matteo said. But she doesn't have to trust me. She just has to hold on for 24 more hours. And then we remind Boston why no one crosses the Ricci family. Day 6, 6 a.m. Across Boston, investigative journalists woke to encrypted emails from an anonymous source. The subject line was simple: the real conspiracy. Inside each email was a data dump, gigabytes of financial records, emails, wire transfers, and audio recordings. Within an hour, phones were ringing in newsrooms across the city. By 7 a.m., the first story broke on the Boston Globe's website. Exclusive. Documents reveal coordinated smear campaign against Ricci family hero. By 8 a.m., every major outlet was scrambling to verify and report. The evidence was ironclad, impossible to ignore. The Strategic Communications Group's internal emails showed the entire operation. Target: Clara Martinez. Objective: destroy credibility. Collateral benefit: humiliate Ricci. Financial records traced $23 million from the Calabrese family through shell corporations to fund the campaign. The recorded conversation from the Beacon Club played on morning news shows, Sal Calabrese and his political allies literally toasting to Clara's destruction. By 9 a.m., the narrative was shifting like a landslide. Clara woke to her phone exploding with notifications, but this time, the tone was different. At Boston Globe, breaking: evidence shows Clara Martinez was victim of elaborate smear campaign. At CNN, businessman and politicians allegedly conspired to destroy reputation of woman who saved child's life. At AP_News, documents reveal Martinez accusations were fabricated by PR firm. Clara sat up in bed, her hands shaking as she scrolled through article after article. The same outlets that had vilified her 48 hours ago were now defending her. Reporters who'd called her a fraud were now calling her a victim. "What's happening?" she whispered.
Her phone rang.
An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Miss Martinez, this is Jennifer Walsh from Channel 7. Yes, I called you before and I owe you an apology. We got it wrong. Completely wrong. But we want to make it right. Matteo Ricci is holding a press conference at St. Augustine's Hospital in 1 hour, and he specifically asked that you be notified. He wants you there." "I don't understand." "Just come," Walsh said.
Please.
The whole story is about to change. St. Augustine's Hospital, 10 a.m. The main entrance was packed with media, cameras, reporters, satellite trucks from national networks. Word had spread fast. Matteo Ricci was making a public statement. Inside the main lobby, a podium had been set up. Hospital administrators stood nervously to the side, unsure what was about to happen in their building. Matteo arrived with Lucia. His 8-year-old daughter wore a yellow dress and held her father's hand tightly. She looked healthy now, pink cheeks, bright eyes, full of life. The cameras captured it all. Vincent scanned the crowd, identifying threats, while Marco and Carlo flanked Matteo protectively. "Mr. Ricci." Reporters shouted questions immediately. "Is it true you have evidence of a conspiracy? Are you claiming innocence? Where is Clara Martinez?" Matteo raised his hand, and the crowd silenced. He had that effect on people, a presence that demanded attention. 6 days ago, Matteo began, his voice calm and clear. "My daughter Lucia had a severe allergic reaction. She was surrounded by excellent doctors, skilled, dedicated professionals who did everything they could. But sometimes, medical emergencies require something beyond standard protocol." He paused, letting cameras flash. "A woman named Clara Martinez, who works in this hospital's cafeteria, heard Lucia's symptoms being described. She recognized them from her own brother's medical emergency years ago. She knew something the doctors didn't. And because she was brave enough to act, brave enough to enter a room where she didn't belong and suggest a solution, my daughter lived." Lucia squeezed his hand, looking up at him with adoration. "This woman asked for nothing in return," Matteo continued. "She refused my money. She refused recognition. She simply wanted to help. That tells you everything you need to know about Clara Martinez's character." He pulled out a tablet, displaying it to the cameras. "But certain people I won't dignify by naming, though their identities are in the evidence now circulating, saw Clara's act of heroism as an opportunity. They spent millions of dollars creating lies, fabricating documents, and paying media sources to turn this woman into a villain." The room erupted with questions. Matteo spoke over them.
Why?
Because they wanted to hurt me. They saw Clara as collateral damage in a business and political war that she never asked to be part of. They were willing to destroy an innocent woman's life, her job, her home, her reputation, her safety, just to make me look weak. His voice hardened. They miscalculated. Matteo gestured to the hospital entrance. Clara, if you're here, please join us. The crowd turned. Clara stood near the doorway, wearing jeans and a simple jacket, looking terrified. Maria had convinced her to come, but now Clara wanted to disappear. Please, Matteo said gently. Slowly, Clara walked forward. The cameras followed her every step. She looked small, vulnerable, human, everything the conspirators had tried to erase. When she reached the podium, Matteo stepped aside, giving her space. This is Clara Martinez, he said. A waitress. A sister. A woman who works 2 jobs to pay off her brother's medical debt. And the person who saved my daughter's life when highly trained professionals couldn't. He turned to look directly at Clara. I'm sorry for what was done to you. You deserved gratitude, and instead you got hatred. But I promise you this. By the end of today, everyone in Boston will know the truth. Lucia suddenly broke free from her father's side and ran to Clara, throwing her small arms around her waist. You're my angel, Lucia said clearly, her voice captured by dozens of microphones. You saved me. Clara's eyes filled with tears. She knelt down and hugged the little girl tightly. The cameras captured it all. The embrace, the tears, the raw emotion. In that single moment, the entire narrative crystallized. This wasn't a conspiracy or a con. This was real. A reporter called out, Clara, how do you feel about the allegations? Clara looked up, still holding Lucia. I just wanted to help. That's all. I never wanted any of this. Do you blame Mr. Ricci? No, Clara said firmly. He didn't do this. I don't know who did, but it wasn't him. He's just a father who loves his daughter. Matteo met her eyes, and something passed between them. Mutual respect, understanding, an unspoken alliance. I'm taking questions now, Matteo announced. But let me be clear. Anyone who spread lies about Clara Martinez, anyone who participated in this conspiracy, anyone who tried to use an innocent woman as a weapon, you'll be held accountable. Legally, professionally, and personally. The press conference lasted another 30 minutes. Matteo presented evidence, answered questions, and methodically dismantled every lie that had been told. By noon, the internet had flipped completely. #JusticeForClara was trending. Apology videos flooded social media. People who'd attacked her were now defending her. Clara Martinez went from villain back to hero in a single morning. But for Clara, standing in that hospital lobby with Lucia still holding her hand, it wasn't about being a hero. It was about finally being believed. 3 weeks after the press conference, Clara's life began to resemble something like normal, though normal had been permanently redefined. The media circus had died down. The paparazzi were gone. The death threats stopped. People on the street still recognized her occasionally, but now they smiled instead of glared. Some even approached to thank her, to apologize for believing the lies, to tell her she was brave. Clara didn't feel brave. She felt exhausted, like someone who'd survived a hurricane and was now surveying the damage. St. Augustine's Hospital had offered her job back, with a raise and a formal apology from the administration. Clara had politely declined. Too many memories in those hallways. Instead, she'd accepted a position at a children's hospital across town, working in their family resource center. Better hours, better pay, and a chance to actually help families navigate medical crises. Rosie had called personally, begging Clara to return to the diner. Clara had agreed to occasional weekend shifts, not because she needed the money anymore, but because Rosie had been kind to her before any of this happened, and Clara didn't forget kindness. Her landlord had rescinded the eviction and offered her a new lease at reduced rent, a guilt offering that Clara accepted without comment. The spray paint had been cleaned off her building's door. Mrs. Chun from 3B had knocked on her door with homemade dumplings and a tearful apology. Slowly, piece by piece, Clara's world was coming back together. Different than before, but intact. The legal fallout had been swift and brutal, though Clara only watched from the sidelines. Strategic Communications Group had dissolved within a week, its executives facing fraud charges. The doctors who provided false expert testimony had been publicly discredited. City Councilman Hayes had resigned in disgrace. Senator Foster was under federal investigation. Real estate mogul Sullivan's company stock had plummeted. As for Sal Calabrese, Mateo had been precise in his revenge. The FBI had raided 3 Calabrese properties, armed with anonymous tips about money laundering and racketeering. Sal was facing a decade in prison, and his family's power in Boston had crumbled overnight. Clara had watched the news coverage with mixed feelings. She was glad the truth had come out, glad the people who'd tried to destroy her were facing consequences. But the scale of the destruction, careers ended, families ruined, empires toppled, it was hard to comprehend that it had all started with her trying to save one little girl. What Clara didn't expect was how much she missed Lucia. It was strange. She'd only met the girl once during the crisis, then again briefly at the press conference. But something about Lucia had lodged itself in Clara's heart. Those big eyes, that fragile frame, the way she'd called Clara her angel. Clara found herself thinking about her at odd moments, wondering if she was fully recovered, if she was happy, if she remembered Clara at all. So when Vincent called 3 weeks after the press conference, Clara's heart jumped. "Miss Martinez, this is Vincent Moretti, Mr. Ricci's head of security. Mr. Ricci would like to extend an invitation for you to visit the estate this Saturday.
Lucia has been asking about you."
Frequently. Clara's throat tightened. "She has." "Every day," Vincent said, and there was warmth in his usually formal tone. "The boss thought you might like to see how well she's doing. No pressure, no obligation. Just a chance to visit if you'd like." Clara thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "I'd like that. Very much." Saturday arrived sunny and cool, early autumn beginning to paint the trees gold and red. Vincent picked Clara up personally, a gesture of respect she didn't quite understand but appreciated. The drive to Mateo's estate took 40 minutes, winding through increasingly wealthy neighborhoods until they reached a gated property that looked like something from a magazine. "This is where they live," Clara breathed. Vincent smiled slightly. "Don't let it intimidate you. It's just a house. Well, a very large house. But Lucia's been watching for you since breakfast." Indeed, the moment the car pulled up, the front door burst open and Lucia came running out in jeans and a pink sweater, her dark curls bouncing. "Clara," she shouted, and Clara barely had time to exit the car before the 8-year-old crashed into her with a hug. "Hey, sweetie," Clara said, kneeling to embrace her properly. "Look at you. You look wonderful." "I feel wonderful," Lucia said, pulling back to beam at her. "Papa says you're the reason I'm still here. He says you're very special." Clara looked up to see Mateo standing in the doorway, watching them. He wore casual clothes, jeans, and a button-down shirt, and looked more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. Almost normal. Almost like just a dad. "Thank you for coming," he said as Clara approached, Lucia clutching her hand. "Thank you for inviting me," Clara replied. "I've been wondering how she was doing." "She's doing remarkably well. The doctors say she's completely recovered." Mateo's eyes were warm. "But she's been talking about you constantly. I think seeing you will mean more to her recovery than any medicine." Lucia tugged Clara toward the house. "Come on. I want to show you my room and my books and my dollhouse that Papa got me and—" "Lucia, let Clara breathe," Mateo said with gentle amusement. But Clara laughed, really laughed for the first time in weeks. "It's okay. I'd love to see everything." The afternoon unfolded like a gift Clara hadn't known she needed. Lucia gave her a tour of the massive estate, chattering nonstop about her favorite hiding spots, her collection of stuffed animals, her drawings that covered one wall of her bedroom. Clara listened, asked questions, and felt something tight in her chest begin to loosen. They had lunch on the terrace, simple sandwiches and lemonade. Mateo joined them, mostly quiet, watching his daughter with an expression Clara had never seen on his face. Pure joy. She hasn't been this animated in years, he told Clara quietly while Lucia ran off to get a book she wanted to show. Even before the allergic reaction, she was subdued, careful. Growing up in my world does that to children. But since you saved her, since she came home, she's different. Lighter. Like she got a second chance at childhood. Clara felt tears prickling her eyes. She's an amazing kid. She is. Mateo paused. And she's amazing partly because of you. You gave her back to me, Clara. I can never repay that debt.
You already did, Clara said.
You cleared my name. You gave me my life back. That wasn't repayment. That was justice. Mateo met her eyes. The debt remains. Before Clara could respond, Lucia returned with an armful of books, and the moment passed. As the sun began to set and Vincent prepared to drive Clara home, Lucia hugged her tightly at the front door. Will you come back? The little girl asked, her voice small and hopeful. Clara looked at Mateo, who nodded almost imperceptibly. If your father says it's okay, I'd love to, Clara said. It's very okay, Mateo said quietly. Lucia's face lit up like Christmas morning. On the drive home, Clara stared out the window, watching the city lights begin to twinkle. For 3 weeks, she'd been focused on surviving, on rebuilding, on just getting through each day. But this afternoon had reminded her of something important. She hadn't just saved a life. She'd preserved a joy, a light, a little girl's chance to be happy. And somehow, in the process, she'd found a connection she hadn't known she was missing. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Thank you for today. Lucia went to bed with the biggest smile. You're welcome here anytime. Mateo. Clara saved the number and smiled into the darkness. Maybe normal wasn't what she'd lost. Maybe normal was something new waiting to be discovered. 3 weeks into Clara's new routine, she kept her promise to Rosie and picked up a Saturday lunch shift at the diner. It was a beautiful October afternoon, the kind where golden sunlight streamed through the windows and made even the worn vinyl booths look almost charming. The lunch rush was winding down, just a few regulars lingering over coffee, a couple of teenagers sharing fries, an elderly man doing a crossword puzzle at the counter. Clara had just delivered a tuna melt to booth 7 when Tommy called from the kitchen. Order up for table 3. She grabbed the plates, balanced them expertly on her arms, a skill perfected over years of waitressing, and turned toward the dining room. That's when she heard it. The rumble of engines. Multiple vehicles, powerful and expensive, pulling up outside. Through the diner's front windows, Clara watched 3 black SUVs park in a perfect line along the curb. Her heart skipped. She recognized those vehicles. Had seen them outside her apartment building, outside the hospital. The diner's door chimed as it opened. Vincent entered first, his eyes scanning the room with professional efficiency. Then 2 more men in dark suits, security, clearly positioning themselves by the door and the back exit. And then Matteo Ricci walked in, holding Lucia's hand. The diner fell absolutely silent. Conversations died mid-sentence. Forks froze halfway to mouths. The teenager's phone clattered onto the table. Even the cook stopped flipping burgers, staring through the kitchen window. Everyone in Boston knew that face. Matteo Ricci didn't visit diners on the South Side. He didn't walk into places like Rosie's with his daughter. His world and this world didn't intersect. But here he was. Matteo wore a dark suit that probably cost more than Clara's monthly rent, but he moved through the space without arrogance, just quiet confidence. Lucia, in a lavender dress with her hair in 2 braids, looked around the diner with wide, curious eyes. Then she saw Clara. Clara. Lucia's face exploded into a smile that could have powered the entire city. Before Matteo could say anything, before anyone could react, Lucia broke free from her father's hand and ran across the diner floor, her shoes pattering on the old linoleum. Clara barely had time to set down the plates before the 8-year-old crashed into her, throwing her arms around Clara's waist with a fierce, uncomplicated love only children possess. "I missed you," Lucia said, her voice muffled against Clara's uniform. "Papa said we could surprise you at work." Clara knelt down, hugging Lucia tightly, her eyes stinging with sudden tears. "I missed you too, sweetie. What are you doing here?" "We came to have lunch." Lucia pulled back, beaming. "Papa says you make the best recommendations because you know everything on the menu." Clara looked up. Mateo stood a few feet away, watching the embrace with an expression she couldn't quite read, something soft and unguarded that transformed his usually serious face. The entire diner was still frozen, everyone staring. Rosie had emerged from the back office, her hand pressed to her chest. "Mr. Ricci," Clara said, standing slowly, Lucia still holding her hand. "You didn't have to." "Lucia wanted to see where you work," Mateo said simply. "And I wanted to see the place where Boston's kindest person spends her Saturdays." It wasn't a grand speech, wasn't theatrical, but every person in that diner heard the respect in his voice, saw the way he looked at Clara, not like an employee, not like someone beneath him, but like someone who mattered. Clara felt her cheeks flush. "Let me get you a table." She led them to the best booth, the one by the window that caught the afternoon sun. Vincent and his men stayed near the entrance, professional and unobtrusive. The other diners slowly, carefully returned to their meals, though Clara could feel every eye still tracking their table. "What would you like?" Clara asked, pulling out her order pad with shaking hands. "What do you recommend?" Lucia asked seriously, studying the laminated menu like it was a sacred text. Clara smiled. "The grilled cheese is perfect. Rosie makes it with 3 types of cheese and butters the bread just right. And the tomato soup is homemade." "That sounds wonderful," Mateo said. "2 of those, please." "Make it 3, Clara said. "My break's coming up. If that's okay." Mateo's eyes crinkled at the corners, the closest thing to a smile she'd seen on him. "We'd be honored." Clara put in the order, then slid into the booth across from Mateo and Lucia when Tommy gave her the nod. For 20 minutes, they ate and talked. Lucia chattered about her new art class, about the book she was reading, about the kitten she'd convinced her father to adopt. Mateo mostly listened, occasionally adding a dry comment that made Lucia giggle and Clara laugh. It felt surreal, sitting in this rundown diner where Clara had served thousands of meals, sharing lunch with a mafia boss and his daughter like they were just normal people. But maybe that was the point. For this moment, in this space, they were just people. A father and daughter. And a friend. "Your papa tells me you've been practicing the piano," Clara said. Lucia nodded enthusiastically. "I'm learning a new song. Will you come hear me play it? Please." Clara glanced at Mateo, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "I'd love to," Clara said. When the meal ended and Mateo paid, leaving a tip that made Rosie's eyes nearly pop out of her head, Lucia hugged Clara again at the door. "Thank you for having lunch with us," the little girl said formally, like she'd been coached. Then, dropping the formality, she whispered, "You're my favorite person." Clara's heart melted. "You're pretty high on my list too, kiddo." Mateo extended his hand to Clara. She shook it, feeling the strength and warmth in his grip. "Thank you," he said quietly, his gray eyes holding hers. "For today. For everything." He didn't elaborate, but Clara understood. This visit wasn't just about lunch. It was a statement, a public declaration in a neighborhood where people watched and whispered, where news traveled fast. Mateo Ricci had brought his daughter to Clara's workplace, had sat in a booth and eaten grilled cheese like a regular person, had treated Clara, a waitress, with the kind of respect usually reserved for dignitaries. It was his way of saying, "This woman matters. She's under my protection. She's not just the waitress." As the convoy of black SUVs pulled away, Clara stood on the sidewalk, watching them disappear into traffic. Rosie came out to stand beside her, wiping her hands on her apron. "Clara Martinez," she said slowly, "I've been running this diner for 40 years. I've served cops and criminals, politicians and prostitutes, saints and sinners. But I have never seen anything like what just happened." Clara turned to look at her. "What just happened?" Rosie smiled, her eyes misty. "You stopped being invisible, honey. You became someone that powerful men respect. Someone that matters in this city." She squeezed Clara's shoulder. "Just don't forget us little people when you're living in that fancy world." "I'm not living in any fancy world," Clara protested. "I'm still me. Still working here, still." "Still you," Rosie agreed. "But you're you with a guardian angel who happens to run half of Boston." She headed back inside, calling over her shoulder. "That changes things, whether you want it to or not." Clara stood alone on the sidewalk, the autumn sun warm on her face. She thought about the past month, the terror, the accusations, the destruction of everything she'd known. Then the vindication, the rebuilding, and now this. Lucia's hugs, Matteo's respect, a place in a world she'd never imagined entering. Rosie was right. Clara wasn't just the waitress anymore. She wasn't sure what she was becoming, but for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid to find out. Week 4 brought an unexpected phone call. "Miss Martinez, this is Vincent. Mr. Ricci would like to meet with you privately. Tomorrow evening, if you're available. It's important." Clara's stomach fluttered with uncertainty. "Is Lucia okay?" "She's perfect," Vincent assured her. "This is about something else. Something Mr. Ricci needs to discuss with you in person." The next evening, Vincent picked her up at 7. The drive to the estate felt longer this time, weighted with anticipation and nervousness. Clara had no idea what Matteo wanted to discuss, and that uncertainty made her palms sweat. Matteo met her in his study, a room she hadn't seen before. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive oak desk, leather chairs that looked older than she was. Through the windows, the estate's gardens glowed in the sunset. "Thank you for coming," Matteo said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. "Can I get you anything? Water, coffee?" "I'm fine," Clara said, sitting carefully. Vincent said this was important. Matteo sat across from her, and for a moment he just looked at her, studying her face like he was trying to solve a complicated equation. "Clara, I'm going to be direct because I respect you too much for games," he began. "Lucia has been happier in the past month than I've seen her in years. She talks about you constantly. She asks when you're coming to visit. She draws pictures of you. You've become incredibly important to her." Clara's heart swelled. "She's important to me too." "I know. I can see it." Matteo leaned forward. "Which is why I have a proposition. I want to offer you a position as Lucia's personal caregiver. You'd live here on the estate, in your own private suite. You'd be responsible for spending time with her, helping with her education, being present in her life. The salary would be substantial, enough to clear your brother's medical debt immediately, with plenty left over." Clara's breath caught. "You want me to live here?"
"Yes."
"With full security, full support, and my complete trust," Matteo's voice was steady. "You'd also have access to our family physician, health insurance, and anything else you need. This isn't charity, Clara. This is me asking you to do something invaluable. Be there for my daughter." Clara's mind spun. Leave her apartment? Leave her jobs? Move into a world she didn't understand. "I don't know anything about being a caregiver," she said. "I'm just a waitress." "You saved her life when trained professionals couldn't," Matteo interrupted gently. "You have compassion, instinct, and genuine care. Those can't be taught. Everything else you can learn." "Why me?" Clara whispered. "You could hire anyone. Someone qualified, someone from your world." "Because Lucia doesn't light up for qualified people from my world," Matteo said, and his voice cracked slightly. "She lights up for you. Because when you hold her, I see my daughter feels safe in a way she hasn't since her mother died 4 years ago. Because you're real, Clara. In a world of angles and agendas, you're just real." Clara felt tears building. This is too much. I can't. Clara? They both turned. Lucia stood in the doorway in her pajamas, clutching a stuffed rabbit. Sweetie, you're supposed to be in bed, Mateo said softly. I heard Clara's voice. Lucia padded into the room, climbing directly into Clara's lap without hesitation. She wrapped her small arms around Clara's neck. Are you staying? Papa said, maybe you could stay with us. Please say yes. Please. Clara looked down at the little girl in her arms. This child who'd been dying 4 weeks ago, who'd been saved by a moment of instinct, who'd somehow become woven into Clara's heart. Then she looked at Mateo, who watched them with an expression of such raw hope and vulnerability that it broke through every defense she had. Can I think about it? Clara asked. Of course, Mateo said. Take all the time you need. But Lucia squeezed tighter. Please don't think too long. I miss you when you're not here. Clara went home that night, sat on her worn couch in her tiny apartment, and thought about the life she'd built. Small, simple, safe. She knew every crack in these walls, every neighbor's routine, every bus schedule. But she also thought about Lucia's smile, about the way the little girl had called her an angel, about having the resources to finally clear Danny's medical debt, about being part of something bigger than survival. The next morning, she called Vincent. Tell Mr. Ricci I accept. 2 weeks later, Clara stood in the grand foyer of the Ricci estate with 2 suitcases, everything she owned that mattered. Maria had cried saying goodbye. Danny had made her promise to call every Sunday. Rosie had hugged her so hard Clara's ribs hurt. Your suite is ready, Vincent said kindly, reaching for her suitcases. 3rd floor, East Wing. It's got a sitting room, bedroom, and bathroom. Lucia picked out some of the decorations. But before Clara could respond, Lucia came running down the staircase, her face radiant. You're here. You're really here. She grabbed Clara's hand. Come see your room. I put flowers in it, and Papa let me pick the books for your shelf, and... Clara let herself be pulled forward, through marble halls and up a grand staircase, into a beautiful suite that was bigger than her entire old apartment. Lucia chattered excitedly, pointing out everything she'd chosen. And behind them, Mateo watched from the hallway, his expression peaceful. Clara caught his eye over Lucia's head. Thank you, she mouthed. He nodded once, a gesture of mutual understanding. That night, after Lucia had finally gone to bed after 3 extra stories, Clara stood at her suite's window, looking out over the estate's gardens bathed in moonlight. Her phone buzzed. A text from Danny. I'm proud of you, sis. You deserve good things. Clara smiled, tears sliding down her cheeks. For weeks ago, she'd been a nobody, a poor waitress working 2 jobs. She'd pushed into a hospital room where she didn't belong and did something 999 experts couldn't. 1 act of compassion. 1 instinctive choice. And now she stood in a mansion, trusted with a little girl's happiness, protected by one of Boston's most powerful men, given a chance at a life she'd never dared to imagine. Clara didn't know what the future held. Didn't know how this unconventional arrangement would work. Didn't know if she belonged in this world of wealth and danger. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Lucia needed her. And somehow, she needed Lucia too. That was enough. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own adjustments, its own surprises. But tonight, Clara Martinez, the woman who saved a life when 999 surgeons couldn't, was exactly where she belonged. Home.